A broke, heartbroken waitress blurts out, "I need a husband by tomorrow," thinking no one is really listening. At the next booth, Keanu Reeves, hiding from his own lonely life and fame, hears her desperate plea. His unexpected offer to help, for just one day, turns into a deal that will change both of their lives forever. The plea in the diner. You ever see a person holding themselves together with nothing but coffee and a fake smile, and you just know they're one breath away from breaking? That was Emma on that rainy Tuesday night, moving table to table in a pink uniform that smelled like French fries and cheap detergent, pretending her whole world wasn't falling apart by tomorrow morning. Plates clattered, neon signs hummed in the windows, and the little corner diner on Sunset felt like a tired movie set that should have wrapped hours ago. Truckers hunched over burgers, a couple argued softly in a back booth, and the air was thick with the smell of bacon and burned toast. Emma weaved through it all, refilling coffee, saying no problem to every complaint, even though everything inside her was a problem tonight. Her ponytail was half falling out, her eyes were puffy in a way mascara couldn't hide, and her hands shook every time she picked up a pot of coffee. She told herself it was just the double shift, just the noise, just the rain drumming on the windows. But the real reason sat inside her chest like a stone. Her father had maybe 24 hours left, and his last clear sentence to her had been, "I just want to see you settled, Emmy. I want to know you're not alone." An hour ago, when the hospital called, she'd been in the walk-in fridge, stacking boxes of frozen fries. The nurse's voice on the phone was gentle, practiced, the kind of tone people use when they already know they're about to break you. "Miss Carter, your father's heart isn't responding the way we hoped. If you have any special wishes or things you want him to see or hear, tomorrow would be the day to do it." Emma had pressed her forehead against the cold metal of the fridge door, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor among cardboard boxes. The fluorescent light buzzed above her. She could feel her heartbeat everywhere, ears, throat, fingertips. He keeps asking me," the nurse had said softly, "if you're happy, if you found your person. I thought you should know." Your person, her father's old-fashioned way of saying husband, the thing he'd teased her about every Christmas, every birthday. "You keep choosing idiots, Emmy," he'd laugh from his hospital bed, thin but still trying to be funny. "One day a decent man is going to walk into your life and you'll scare him off because you think you don't deserve him." Now there was no more time to argue, no more time to say, "I'm fine on my own, Dad." There was just tomorrow and that one stubborn wish in his fading mind. She had hung up, wiped her eyes once, and walked straight back onto the diner floor because that's what you do when you're broke and rent is due on Friday. You keep moving. By midnight the place had thinned out. Rain streaked the big front windows, smearing the red and blue neon into soft colors. The jukebox in the corner played some old love song nobody was actually listening to. Emma leaned against the counter for a second, rubbing a knot in the back of her neck. Lucy, the other waitress on night shift, slid up beside her, chewing gum and studying her face. "You look like you got hit by a bus, in an emotional way. What happened?" Emma tried to laugh, but it cracked halfway. "The hospital called." Lucy's gum stopped moving. "Is he?" "Tomorrow," Emma whispered, staring down at the coffee-stained order pad in her hands. "The doctor says if I have anything I want him to see or hear, that's the last real chance." Lucy's eyes softened. She knew how much Emma had been juggling: 2 jobs, hospital visits, late fees, and the empty space left by people who promised to stay and didn't. "So go," Lucy said at once. "Call in sick, I'll cover." "I can't," Emma cut in. "My rent is already late. I owe for last month's meds. If I miss another shift, Rick will cut my hours again and then I lose the apartment and—" her voice trembled. "I can't lose everything in the same week, Luce. I can't." Lucy glanced toward the kitchen where their manager was counting receipts, then back at her friend. "What does he want to see?" she asked gently. "Your dad." Emma swallowed. She could hear his voice in her head again, playful and stubborn, the way he'd been before the hospital smells and the machines. "He keeps asking if I found my person," she said. "He wants to know I'm safe, loved." She forced a shaky smile. "He wants to meet my husband, the one that doesn't exist." For a beat, the only sound between them was the sizzle from the grill and the low murmur of a late-night talk show playing on the tiny TV above the counter. Lucy broke it with a half-joking, half-serious idea. "So we get you a husband," she said, smacking her gum again. "A fake one, one night, one hospital visit, actor, improv guy, Tinder date, whatever. People fake stuff for Instagram all the time. We fake it for your dad. He goes happy, you survive, everybody wins." Emma let out a breathy laugh, the kind that happens when your mind is actually on the edge. "Yeah, sure," she said. "Let me just hop on Craigslist. Wanted, husband for 24 hours, must be convincing and not a psychopath. That'll end well." "I'm serious," Lucy insisted. "You're too honest. Sometimes a little lie is the kindest thing." The words dug into Emma more than she wanted to admit. A kind lie. A pretend husband. Could that really be less cruel than letting her father die with that one wish unfulfilled? She pressed her palms to the cold metal counter, feeling it steady her. "He'll know," she murmured. "He always knew when I was lying, even when I stole a cookie at 5 years old. He'd know." "Maybe," Lucy said, "but maybe he just wants to see you with someone who looks at you like you matter, even if it's just for a few hours." She nudged Emma with her elbow, trying to coax a real smile. "Come on, you live in LA land of unemployed actors. We're practically stepping on fake husbands." At the far end of the diner, in a shadowed corner booth near the window, a man in a black suit slowly lifted his head from his coffee. He had been there for over an hour, quiet, almost invisible despite the kind of face people normally whispered about. A baseball cap lay on the seat beside him, his dark hair pushed back, stubble rough along his jaw. On the table in front of him sat an untouched slice of cherry pie and a dog-eared notebook filled with messy handwriting. He had come in because the lights of the diner felt honest in a way the film set hadn't. All night, people had shouted his name, shoved cameras in his face, expected him to be larger than life. In here, he was just another tired guy in black, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt hope. The world knew him. The posters on buses knew him. The fans on the sidewalk knew him. But right now, the girl in the pink uniform didn't even glance in his direction. She was too busy trying not to crumble. He heard every word. Emma pulled her phone from her apron with trembling fingers. "Fine," she muttered, more to herself than to Lucy. "Fine, let's be crazy." She opened a dating app she hadn't touched in months and stared at the Create New Post button like it might bite. Lucy leaned over eagerly. "Write it exactly how you feel. Somebody out there loves drama." "Yeah, and kidnapping," Emma said under her breath. Still, her thumb tapped the screen. She started typing, the words half joke, half prayer. "Urgent, need a husband by tomorrow. 1 day only. No funny business. Just need someone kind who can pretend to love me long enough to make a dying man smile." She stared at the blinking cursor for a long second, then added, "Must be able to lie convincingly and leave quietly when it's over." Her throat tightened around that last line. The idea of another man walking away didn't just hurt, it felt expected, almost natural. People left. That was the one thing life had been consistent about. "Okay," Lucy whispered, eyes wide. "Now hit post before you think too hard." Emma's thumb hovered over the button. "This is insane," she whispered. "I'm actually asking the internet for a husband." "Yeah," Lucy said. "Welcome to modern romance." Across the diner, the man in the black suit shifted in his seat. The phrase, "need a husband by tomorrow," echoed in his mind, stubborn and wrong in all the ways he recognized. Desperation, self-sacrifice, that dangerous willingness to do anything for someone you love. He had seen people sign away their souls for less than a parent's last wish. He watched the waitress's shoulders shake as she blinked back tears, her thumb still suspended over her phone screen. Something about the picture hit him harder than any stunt, harder than any scripted heartbreak. This wasn't a movie. Nobody was yelling, "Cut." He knew what it was to feel time closing in, to wish you could rewrite the last chapter for someone you'd already lost. Emma squeezed her eyes shut. "What am I doing?" she whispered. "This is crazy. This is stupid. I can't trust a stranger with my father's last memory of me." Tears slipped down her cheeks now, quiet and hot. She didn't bother to wipe them away. The night crowd was too thin to care, or so she thought. She lowered the phone without hitting post and pressed both hands over her face. Her words came out cracked and small, meant only for herself and maybe the sticky countertop. I just need a husband by tomorrow, she sobbed. Just for one day, just so he doesn't die thinking I wasn't worth loving. The sentence hung in the air like smoke. For a second, the entire diner seemed to pause. The sizzling grill, the clink of cutlery, the hum of the TV. Even the rain against the window softened. At the corner booth, the man in black quietly stood up. He left some cash on the table, grabbed his cap, and took a slow breath, as if he were about to step into a scene with no script. He walked toward the counter, each footstep loud in his own ears. Doubt flickered. This was insane, unplanned, way beyond the usual boundaries between his life and strangers. But something stronger than caution pushed him forward. Emma felt someone stop on the other side of the counter, but she didn't look up. She was too busy trying to push the tears back into her eyes, as if that could push time backward too. A low, gentle voice broke the silence between them. "Excuse me," the man said. I couldn't help overhearing." He hesitated like the next words cost him something. "Did you say you need a husband by tomorrow?" Emma's hands froze halfway to her face. Her heart kicked once, hard, like the universe had just thrown a rock through the window of her life. She lifted her head slowly, ready to snap at some rude stranger, and the breath caught in her throat as her eyes finally focused on the man standing in front of her. The man the whole world would recognize in a second. The man who had just offered himself, in that calm, uncertain voice, to step into her madness. Her brain struggled to find any words at all as she whispered, barely audible, You're. And before the name could leave her lips, before she could decide if this was real or some stress-induced hallucination, he gave her a small, almost shy smile that didn't match the movie posters at all, and the neon lights flickered above them, as if the diner itself was holding its breath. The deal in the neon light. Emma's tongue tangled around his name, but he shook his head gently, like he'd had this conversation too many times before. "Tonight I'm just a guy in a diner," he said. "Okay, just a guy who heard you say something that sounded a lot like a prayer." The words hit her harder than his face did. She realized she was still clutching the coffee pot with white-knuckled fingers. Her cheeks burned. How much had he heard? How pathetic had she sounded? "I'm sorry," she muttered, fumbling to set the pot down. "You shouldn't have. I didn't mean for anyone to hear," he finished softly. "Emma, you were crying in the middle of a room full of people. Someone was always going to hear." She froze. "How do you know my name?" He gave a small tilt of his head toward her chest. Her name tag. Right. She suddenly wished she could rip it off and become anonymous again. Lucy appeared at her side like she'd been fired out of a cannon. "Is everything?" Her eyes landed on the man in black and her jaw literally dropped. "Oh my, you look like..." He put a finger to his lips, a quick secret between conspirators. "Please, just Keanu, and maybe keep this between us." Lucy nodded so hard her ponytail nearly flew off. "I'm gonna, go refill ketchup." She grabbed an already full bottle and backed away, bumping into a chair and almost falling. The moment would have been funny if Emma's life wasn't on fire. Keanu slid into an empty stool at the counter, close enough to talk but not so close that she felt trapped. There was a carefulness to the way he moved, like he was always making room for other people's fear. "Look," he said, lowering his voice. "I know this is weird. For you, for me, for your friend who's about to hyperventilate over by the napkin dispenser. But you said you needed a husband by tomorrow. And I was sitting there thinking about how many fake lives I've lived on screen and how few real chances I've taken when somebody actually needed help." Emma let out a shaky breath that was almost a laugh. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said. "I've lost people too. Hospitals, last wishes. I know what that air feels like. Heavy. Unfair." His eyes softened, shadows passing through them that she recognized instantly, grief that never quite left. "If all your father needs is to see his daughter loved and safe for one day, I can do that. I know how to hit a mark and tell a story." A story, she repeated, bitterness creeping in. So you're offering to what act my husband? I'm offering to be there, he said quietly, as convincingly as I can for him and for you. Emma shook her head, trying to keep control. Why? You don't know me. I could be crazy. I could be lying about everything. You could be, he agreed calmly, but your hands are still shaking. His gaze dropped to where her fingers gripped the counter. People can fake tears. They don't fake tremors like that. She snatched her hands back, embarrassed. I don't want to be somebody's charity case, you know. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and see a headline. Actor saves sad waitress, gets moral points. A small, pained smile touched his mouth. You think I want that? I spend half my life hiding from cameras just to buy groceries. I'm not doing this for a headline. Then why? She pressed. I'm serious. Why give a whole day of your life to some stranger who spilled her tragedy in a greasy spoon? He hesitated, like he was reaching into a place he didn't visit often. When he spoke, his voice had a rough edge. Because the last time someone I loved was in a hospital bed, I was on the other side of the world pretending to save people who weren't real, he said. And I told myself the work mattered, that the movie mattered. But when I finally got on a plane, it was too late. Nobody in that room cared how many tickets I'd sold. They just cared that I wasn't there. The diner hum filled the pause that followed. Grills sizzling, plates clinking, Lucy's nervous whispering in the corner. Emma swallowed against the lump in her throat. I can't fix that, he went on softly, but I can get this one thing right if you'll let me. Emma stared at him, searching his face for any sign this was a joke, a dare, a bored celebrity trying to feel good about himself. All she saw was a tired man in a black suit, eyes rimmed with the same exhaustion she felt in her own bones. It's not just showing up, she said. My dad, he's sharp when the meds don't drown him. He'll ask questions, how we met, our first date, the first time we fought, the first time she broke off, flushing. He knows me, he knows my tells. Then we don't lie cruelly, Keanu said. We just rearrange the truth. You tell me real stories, I borrow them for us. No elaborate fake life, no pretending to be someone I'm not, just me who happened to get lucky in one career. You who happened to get stuck with the worst week of your life. Two idiots trying to make an old man smile. Her chest ached. It was absurd. It was reckless. It was also somehow the first offer of real help she'd had in months. What about your people? She asked quietly. Your manager, your studio, whatever. Don't you have to ask permission before you emotionally adopt random waitresses? He huffed a soft laugh. They think they run my life. They don't own my hours. Tomorrow is supposed to be a day off anyway. I can spend it hiding in my house, or I can spend it wearing a cheap ring and lying for a good reason. Emma thought of her father's lined face, the way his eyes searched the doorway every time she visited, hopeful and disappointed all at once. She imagined walking in with this man, hand in hand, saying, "Here he is, Dad. Here's the proof that I was always worth loving." Her heart lurched between hope and guilt. This is still a lie, she whispered. It is, he said, but maybe it's one of those lies that tells the truth. You are worth loving, Emma. Your father already knows that. Maybe he just needs to see it acted out one last time before he lets go. Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. Finally, he slid a napkin toward her and picked up a pen from the counter. Here, he said, my number, so you know I'm not bailing the second I step outside. He scribbled quickly and pushed it to her. The numbers looked weirdly normal. No security code, no assistant's name, just a phone number like any other guy might give. Emma stared at it, then at him. If I call this, it won't be your lawyer, she asked. If my lawyer answers, hang up, he said dryly. I'll meet you here after your shift. We can figure out details, or, his eyes held hers, or you can tear that up the second I walk out and we pretend this never happened. Her fingers hovered over the napkin. Her whole life seemed to balance on that small piece of paper. Emma, he said softly, you don't have to do this to prove anything to your father. If you decide to go in there tomorrow alone, you'll still be enough. The sincerity in his voice almost undid her. She blinked hard, one tear escaping anyway. Yeah, she whispered, but he won't believe it. She took a steadying breath, feeling something inside her shift, like a door creaking open in a long, sealed room. Then she folded the napkin carefully, as if it were something precious instead of paper. "Okay," she said, voice trembling but clear. "Let's do it, be my husband tomorrow." A small, almost relieved smile touched his face. "All right," he said, "then I guess we better fall in love really fast." Emma let out a choked laugh, half terror and half something dangerously like hope. "If we're doing this," she said, "we do it my way, no red carpets, no cameras, no turning my dad's last day into a circus." "Deal," he said instantly, "no circus." She held his gaze, searching for any crack in the promise. "And one more thing." "Name it." "You don't save me," she said quietly. "We save each other just for a day." For a moment, something raw flickered in his eyes, like those words hit closer to home than she meant them to. "Yeah," he murmured, "I can live with that." Outside, the rain began to ease, the neon reflections on the wet pavement softening from harsh lines into something almost gentle, as if the whole city had leaned in to listen to the impossible deal two strangers had just made. The night before forever. Closing time came too slowly, and then all at once. Rick, the manager, pretended not to stare after realizing exactly who had been taking up the corner booth, but his hands shook so badly while locking the register that a roll of quarters spilled onto the floor. Lucy collected every single one, humming "We didn't see anything" under her breath. By the time the closed sign flipped, the diner felt like a different world. The glare softened, the noise dropped, and it was just Emma wiping down tables with mechanical movements while her mind spun, and Keanu waiting patiently at the counter with his empty coffee cup. "You can still back out," he said when she finished her last table. "I vanish pretty easily, ask my agent." "Stop giving me exits," she replied, hanging the rag over a chair. "I'll start using them." He studied her for a second, then nodded toward a booth by the window. "Can we sit? We need a believable history. Couples don't get made overnight, but we can fake a few years if we cram hard enough." They slid into the booth facing each other. Outside, the streetlights painted long silver streaks on the wet asphalt. Inside, the jukebox had gone quiet, leaving only the soft hum of the fridge. "Tell me about you," he said. "The real you, no acting notes yet." She hesitated, then pushed past the awkwardness. "Okay, I grew up in Bakersfield. My mom left when I was 8. My dad worked nights at a warehouse and coached my softball team during the day until the chemo started. I used to draw comics of us as superheroes in the hospital waiting room. Mine always had like laser eyes. His superpower was making rent." He smiled. "That's a good power." "Yeah," she said softly. "Until the treatments got too expensive, and then I became the one trying to keep the lights on. Hence the pink uniform and my impressive collection of overdue bills." "And boyfriends?" he asked gently. "Any we should avoid accidentally copying?" "Too serious, a lot of almosts," she said, shrugging. "One left because hospitals freaked him out. One left because I wouldn't leave my dad's bedside to go on vacation. Guess I've got a type." He winced. "Cowards." "Men who say the right thing until it costs them something," she corrected. "Big difference." He nodded slowly, like he'd just been handed a piece of a puzzle. "Then I definitely don't want to play that part." "My turn," she said, pointing at him. "If you're going to be my husband tomorrow, I need to know more than your IMDb page." He leaned back, thinking. "I grew up without much money either, lived in rented apartments, boarded rooms, moved a lot. Acting was supposed to be a summer job. It escalated." A wry half smile. "People think fame fixes everything. Really, it just turns your problems into headlines." "Any real relationships?" she asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "A few, some good, some that ended because this life is loud. Hard to hear yourself think in it, let alone someone else." He looked down at his hands. "I've lost people too, that's the short version." The weight in his voice said the long version would hurt too much to tell in one night. She let it be. They spent the next hour weaving his details into hers, building a shared history out of half-truths and borrowed memories. How they'd met, when he snuck into the diner one night trying to escape a film set. How she'd pretended not to recognize him. how he'd come back the next night, and the next, until the coffee got terrible but the conversations got good. Somewhere between inventing their first fight over who made the worst life choices and their first kiss in the rain behind the dumpster because, of course, Emma realized she was laughing, really laughing. The sound startled her. "This is insane," she said, wiping her eyes. "I'm workshopping my fake marriage with Keanu Reeves in an empty diner at 2 in the morning. Did I die, and is this like the weirdest afterlife ever?" He grinned. "If this is the afterlife, the coffee still sucks, so we got robbed." She snorted, and the moment felt suddenly easy. Not normal, not with the weight of tomorrow pressing on them, but less sharp around the edges. "We should get you a ring," he said eventually, glancing at her bare hand. "Your dad will notice that." She looked down, embarrassed. "I can't afford." "I can," he said simply. "But if you don't want something expensive, we don't have to. Thrift store." She eyed his black suit. "You in a thrift store?" "I've shot fight scenes in worse places," he said. "Come on. There's a 24-hour 1-2 blocks over. Nobody bothers anyone there at this hour." 15 minutes later, Emma found herself clinging to the back of his motorcycle, helmet slightly too big, heart hammering as the city blurred past in streaks of gold and red. The wind cut through the fog in her head, shrieking in her ears, but for the first time all day, the fear felt almost good. Alive. "You okay back there?" he called over his shoulder at a red light. "I don't know yet," she yelled, laughing despite herself. "Ask me when I'm not about to die on Sunset Boulevard." "You're not dying on my watch," he shouted. "Tomorrow's booked." The thrift store smelled like old fabric and dust and 1,000 forgotten lives. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as they dug through trays of tarnished jewelry. It should have been ridiculous. This man who'd worn million-dollar watches on screen now turning over $10 rings with serious concentration. "Too flashy," Emma said as he held up a fake diamond boulder. "My dad would think you were compensating for something." He choked on a laugh and put it back. Eventually, she found a simple silver band, a little scratched but solid. It slid onto her finger like it belonged there. "How much?" she asked the sleepy cashier. $3, the girl mumbled, barely looking up from her phone. Then she glanced again, did an almost cartoon double take, and her eyes went huge. "Wait, aren't you?" Keanu lifted his hands in a gentle plea. "I'm just buying a ring," he said, "for my wife." The word hung there, awkward and strangely intimate. Emma felt a flush creep up her neck. She knew it was a line, a shield against recognition, but some part of her body didn't get the memo. The cashier's expression softened. Maybe she bought it, maybe she didn't care. Either way, she just smiled faintly and rang them up. "Nice choice," she said, nodding at Emma's hand. "Congrats, I guess." Outside, the night had turned crisp and bright. They stepped into the parking lot, both blinking against the sudden flare of a camera flash. "Keanu, over here, who's she?" Two men stepped out from behind a parked SUV, lenses already raised. Emma froze like a deer caught in headlights. His hand found her elbow, steady and firm. "Back inside," he murmured, guiding her smoothly without any of the panic she felt shivering under her skin. Another flash went off, capturing her profile, their joined shadows on the glass. The familiar boredom slid over his face like armor as he turned slightly, placing himself between her and the cameras. "Guys," he said, voice calm but edged, "it's 2 in the morning, let it go." One of them laughed. "Come on, man, late night ring shopping with a mystery girl. You know that's not nothing, gimme a smile." Emma's heart pounded so hard she could barely hear. This was exactly what she hadn't wanted. Her father's last day turned into gossip meat. "Do they always just appear like that?" she whispered. "Not always," he said, "but enough." He scanned the lot, calculating. Then his eyes lit on the narrow alley next to the building that led to the back street. "New plan," he said softly. "You trust me." She hesitated only a heartbeat. For the next 24 hours, apparently, yes. "Good answer." In one quick motion, he slipped his arm around her shoulders and steered her toward the alley, moving with the unhurried pace of a man who had been chased before, and knew speed only fed the sharks. Hey, don't run, we just want a... The photographer's words cut off as Keanu suddenly veered left, pulling Emma into the shadowed gap between buildings. Her back brushed cool brick. His body shielded hers as another flash popped wide, catching only the edge of his shoulder. "Keep your face down," he murmured. "Helps later, trust me." They jogged down the alley, footsteps echoing. Behind them, the photographers cursed and scrambled to follow, but by the time they reached the end, the motorcycle was already roaring to life. "On," he said, handing her the helmet. "Now." Adrenaline gave her speed. She swung her leg over the bike, arms wrapping instinctively around his waist. The machine growled beneath them as they shot out onto the side street and vanished into the labyrinth of sleeping city. Emma's pulse raced, but somewhere between the second and third turn, the fear turned into wild, disbelieving laughter that spilled out of her and into the wind. "This is insane," she shouted. "Yep," he called back. "You picked the wrong stranger for a quiet fake marriage." She held on tighter, city lights streaking past, the ring cold and unfamiliar on her finger. She didn't see the one frame the photographer had managed to snap, a slightly blurred but unmistakable shot of Keanu Reeves leaving a thrift store at 2:07 a.m. with a young woman in a pink dress, both wearing rings that caught the neon just right. By the time they pulled up outside her tiny apartment an hour later with the details of tomorrow half planned, and their fake story stitched together like a patchwork quilt, that photo was already online, captioned, "Keanu Reeves, secret late-night wedding. Vows for a day." Morning found Emma staring at herself in the cracked mirror by her door, hardly recognizing the woman looking back. She de-pulled on a simple white summer dress she hadn't worn since a happier time, paired with a faded denim jacket to keep it from looking too much like an actual wedding. The silver ring from the thrift store glinted softly on her finger. Her eyes were tired, rimmed in red, but there was something else there too, steel maybe, or surrender, or both. A knock sounded. Her heart jolted as she opened the door to find him standing in the narrow hallway, dressed in dark jeans and a plain gray shirt under a black jacket, his own ring already on. No entourage, no cameras, just a man holding a small paper bag that smelled like coffee and bagels. "For the bride," he said, a little awkward. She almost corrected him, not a bride, not really, but the word made something inside her ache and she let it pass. "Thanks," she said, "for coming, for not changing your mind." "I did change my mind," he said, "about 7 times. Then I remembered how stubborn you looked last night, and I figured you'd just drag some other poor soul into this, and they wouldn't know how to handle the paparazzi." "That's the only reason you stayed?" she asked, one brow lifting. "The bagels were a close second," he deadpanned. The drive to the hospital felt shorter than usual, like time itself was leaning forward, impatient. As they parked, Emma's breath started coming too fast. The building loomed in front of her, all gray concrete and glass, smelling already in her memory of antiseptic and endings. "Hey," Keanu said softly, turning toward her in the front seat. "Look at me." She did, eyes wide. "Try something," he said. "Before every intense scene I do this. It's dumb, but it works." He held up his hand. 5 things you can see." She glanced around, confused but willing. Steering wheel, your jacket, that coffee stain on my dress, the tree outside, my shaking hands." 4 things you can feel," he said. "The seat under me, ring on my finger, my heartbeat, the fact that this is insane." 3 things you can hear. "Your voice, that car alarm somewhere, my dad's monitor in my head." 2 things you can smell. "Hospital air, bagels." 1 thing you can't live without," he finished. The answer leaped out before she could stop it. "My dad." He held her gaze. "Then let's go make his last day about that," he said. "Not about fear, not about me, just about a man who loved his kid so much he annoyed her into a fake marriage." A wet laugh escaped her. "You're weirdly good at this." "I've had a lot of practice pretending to be brave," he said. "Today we try the real thing." The corridors were too bright, the soles of their shoes too loud on the polished floor. Nurses glanced up, some doing double takes, eyes flicking from his face to their hands to the rings. He pressed a finger to his lips, and they nodded, professional curiosity warring with respect. One of them whispered after they passed, "If that's her husband, he better be half as kind as he looks." At her father's door, Emma stopped, palm flat on the cold metal. Her knees suddenly felt boneless. "I can't," she whispered. "What if he knows? What if he sees right through this and spends his last hours disappointed in me?" Keanu's voice was gentle. "Or what if he gets to leave this world thinking his daughter found someone who will stand beside her when things are at their worst?" She swallowed hard. "You sure you can pull that off?" He gave a crooked smile. "I've done 20-minute fight sequences on a broken ankle. I think I can hold your hand for an afternoon." She sucked in a shaky breath, turned the handle, and stepped inside. The room was dimmer than the hallway, shades half drawn against the morning sun. Machines hummed softly, casting green and blue light on her father's worn face. He seemed smaller somehow, shrunken into the hospital bed, but his eyes, when they opened, were still the same sharp hazel she'd known all her life. "Emmy," he rasped, and everything in her chest broke and mended at the same time. "Hey, Dad," she said, forcing a smile as she moved to his side. She took his hand, thin and cool under her fingers. "I brought someone." His gaze shifted past her, focusing slowly on the man hovering awkwardly near the foot of the bed. For a long moment, nobody spoke, then her father's lips twitched. "Well," he whispered, voice rough, "you finally stopped chasing idiots." Emma let out a startled laugh that turned into a half-sob. Keanu stepped closer, shoulders a little squared like he was stepping onto a stage he desperately didn't want to mess up. "Mr. Carter," he said, offering his hand, "I'm Jack." It was the name they'd chosen in the diner, safe and anonymous. Mr. Carter's fingers closed weakly around his. "Jack," he repeated slowly, "you take care of my girl." There it was, the question everything hinged on. "Yes, sir," Keanu said, with none of the polished charm he used on talk shows. His voice was quiet, raw. "I will, as long as she lets me." Her father's gaze lingered on him, searching, weighing. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thin. Emma's heart thudded painfully. "How'd you meet?" Mr. Carter asked, eyes sliding to Emma with a hint of mischief. "And don't tell me it was in a bar. I raised you better than movie cliches." Emma opened her mouth, then shut it, panic flaring. The story they'd rehearsed tangled up in her throat. "We met right here," Keanu said smoothly, stepping in without missing a beat. "In her diner. She forgot my order 3 times because she was trying not to cry in front of a stranger who ordered black coffee and cherry pie." Her father's gaze shifted back to her. "You cry at work now?" "Occasionally," she muttered. "And you," he asked Keanu, "you tip well at least." "Very," Emma said quickly. "He's the reason I didn't get evicted last month." The lie was wrapped around a small truth, that he had already done more for her in 12 hours than most people had in years. Her father chuckled, a sound that turned into a cough. "Good," he wheezed. "She deserves someone who pays his debts. God knows she always paid mine." As the morning wore on, they talked. Or rather, her father interrogated Jack like any protective parent would, and Keanu answered with a mix of their rehearsed history and his own real heart. He mentioned Emma's drawings, her stubbornness, the way she snorted when she laughed too hard, details he'd pulled from their midnight conversation and tucked away like treasure. At one point, when Emma stepped into the bathroom to splash water on her face, her father reached out and caught Keanu's wrist with surprising strength. "She thinks I don't know," he said quietly, eyes clear in a way they hadn't been in weeks. "About the act." Keanu's chest tightened. "Sir." "I'm old, not stupid," Mr. Carter went on. "My girl couldn't lie to save her life, God bless her, but she's trying to save mine right now, and I'm going to let her." He swallowed hard. "If you want me to leave." "I want you to listen," the old man interrupted. "You're an actor. I've seen your stuff. You're good. Too good to be wasting a whole day in a hospital room with a dying stranger unless you've got a reason." Keanu didn't answer, couldn't. "My reason is simple," Mr. Carter said. I don't want her walking out of here thinking she has to be alone forever just because I'm gone. You understand that?" "Yes, sir," he whispered. "Then promise me something." His fingers tightened around Keanu's wrist. "You don't have to marry her, you don't have to stay, but you look out for her. From a distance, up close, I don't care. Just don't let her talk herself into being small. She's been doing that since her mother left." The request landed like a weight on Keanu's ribs, heavy but somehow right. "I promise," he said, the words surprising him with how easy they came. "I'll look out for her, one way or another." "Good man," Mr. Carter murmured, releasing him as Emma stepped back into the room, eyes still damp but calmer. "What are you two conspiring about?" she asked, trying for lightness. "Football," her father said innocently. "Your husband here doesn't know a thing about it. Tragic." "Fake news," Keanu muttered. Later, when the meds made her father drowsy, he asked them almost shyly, "Would you humor an old man? Tell me about the first moment you knew you loved each other." Emma's gaze flew to Keanu's. They hadn't rehearsed this part. She opened her mouth, but he spoke first. "For me, it was when she took her break to sit with a homeless vet who'd been nursing 1 cup of soup for an hour," he said quietly. She refilled his coffee without making him feel like a burden. She laughed at his terrible jokes. She treated him like a person, not a problem. Emma stared at him. That had actually happened months ago. She'd forgotten he'd even been in the diner that night. Her father's eyes softened. "And you, Emmy?" She swallowed. "When he stayed," she said simply. "That first night he came in, I messed up his order, I snapped at him, I dropped his pie. I was a mess, but he stayed, came back the next day, and the next." She forced a small smile. "I figured anybody that patient was either a saint or an idiot, and saints are in short supply." The corner of her father's mouth lifted. "Sounds like love to me." The afternoon slipped by in a strange, suspended peace. They watched an old Western on the tiny TV, her father muttering critiques of the actor's form, Keanu chuckling softly and not revealing he personally knew 2 of the men on screen. There was no grand speech, no dramatic music. Just small moments. Her father's hand on hers, her head on the edge of the mattress, Keanu sitting quiet sentinel in the corner chair. As the sun began to dip, painting the hospital windows gold, Mr. Carter's breaths grew slower, more uneven. He turned his head toward Emma one last time, eyes bright despite the fog settling over them. "You did good, kid," he whispered. "Took care of me, found yourself someone who looks at you like you hung the moon. I can go now." "Don't," she choked. "Don't say it like that, like you're clocking out of a shift." He smiled faintly. "That's all life is, one long shift. The trick is who you work it beside." His gaze slid to Keanu, then back to her. "Don't work it alone, Emmy, you hear me." Tears blurred everything. She nodded, unable to speak. "Good girl," he murmured. His eyes drifted closed, his hand relaxing in hers as the monitor traced its slow, fragile rhythm. A soft alarm sounded in the hall. Nurses moved with practiced urgency, checking vitals, adjusting meds. They told her he was resting, that it might be hours or minutes, that these things were unpredictable. The words washed over her in a muffled haze. In the end, she stepped out into the corridor just to breathe. Her back hit the cool wall, legs finally giving out. She slid down until she was sitting on the linoleum, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. For the first time all day, she let the sobs come, ugly and loud. Keanu sank down beside her without a word, shoulder to shoulder, not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth like an anchor. "You did good," he said quietly, echoing her father. "You gave him exactly what he needed." "I lied to him," she choked, "on his deathbed." "You gave him peace," he replied. "If that's a sin, then the world needs more of it." They sat there, 2 exhausted strangers in a hospital hallway, while the fluorescent lights hummed and the world kept spinning outside. A nurse hurried past, eyes glued to her phone. A cluster of staff had gathered around the TV at the station, murmuring. The bright, over-cheerful voice of an entertainment reporter floated down the hall. "Spotted last night with a mystery woman at a thrift store, both wearing wedding rings. Fans are asking, did Keanu Reeves secretly tie the knot?" Emma's head snapped up. On the screen above a scrolling ticker of headlines was a slightly grainy photo of the two of them in the thrift store doorway. Her laughter-creased face, his protective posture, both their hands very clearly showing matching rings. The nurse's gaze flicked from the TV to the hallway, landing on them where they sat on the floor, Emma in her white dress and denim jacket. Mascara streaked, Keanu still in his jacket, ring glinting under harsh lights. Her mouth fell open. Emma felt her stomach drop, a different kind of panic flooding in to fill the space grief had hollowed out. Keanu followed her gaze to the screen. His own face looked back at him, smiling in a moment that hadn't felt like a performance until now. "Oh no. What have we done?" Emma whispered, as the words "secret wedding" flashed across the bottom of the TV and somewhere in his pocket. His phone began to ring, vibrating with a fury that promised their quiet little lie had just exploded into something much, much bigger.